Most world economies have been messed up for a long time, but now more than ever when money is being printed at the blink of an eye and the value of money is decreasing rapidly while banking systems are disintegrating worldwide, there is a dire need to look elsewhere to form the core of the economy. And that is where Bitcoin comes in as a solution.
Saying, I've never seen a more dominant opportunity in my entire lifetime. And if that is the case, it's time to really back your bet.
When you look at the situation, as well as all the possible outcomes of what the messed up economies could give birth to, this emergence of Bitcoin seems like a rare happening. Some people believe that deflation is persistent, but when the economy is worse than expected, we will not be able to get rid of the economic mess until we do something. So, what do people see as the answer to deflation and slow economy? They print money and try to create as much fiscal stimulus in the markets as possible. But let's for a minute assume that this is wrong and the markets are right.
Okay, so the answer to deflation and slow economy is printing of money and more fiscal stimulus. Okay, let's then push that aside and say, no, Raoul's a total idiot. He's completely wrong. The markets are right. Inflation is everything.
Which would pertain to the fact that inflation is everything. So then, in an inflationary market, automatically assets like Bitcoin and gold will do well. So here we have got probably the least likely outcome where everything just returns back to kind of the situation of 1 to 1.5% GDP growth and we just forget any of this happened. But is that possible? That's not going to happen, or maybe it will, but that is the risk that we all run in the Bitcoin position. So you can say that inflation and deflation of any sort, even in past episodes from 2008 or 2012 in Europe, when Europe was almost about to go under or even periodically afterwards, the central bank kept stimulating. They never stopped and they never will. So in this case, this seemed like a good setup. And it would be smart to say that you like gold or Bitcoin. Those are the main bets that anyone would put on some bonds if they are a deflationist and had some dollars, Bitcoin, and some other trading positions. But if you prefer to look at the macros, you can see an opportunity and a great chart with Bitcoin. And here you will be saying that you have to add to this because this will be big in the future. You would then be looking for a big sell-off of other assets as well because you see this pattern emerging and want to start adding it to your portfolio. Anyone in this position would feel no regrets just going across all assets and reducing trading positions just to add Bitcoin. You see the propensity to make more money than anything else that comes with Bitcoin.
In an inflationary market, well, Bitcoin and gold do well. So here we've got a smile where the least likely outcome, which is everything just returns back to kind of 1.5%, 2% GDP growth, and we all forget it's just happened. That's not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. Maybe it does, but that's the risk that we all run in the Bitcoin position.
And when you start looking at the charts and reading about global macro investors, comparing Bitcoin versus all other assets, you will realize that Bitcoin is about to eat the world. That it is going to become the super black hole in the sense that will outperform every single asset class, which has never been seen before, ever. We have seen a growth with gold, which was dominant at the time, but even that did not outperform what Bitcoin can do. And this point came for a lot of people recently. In the last few years, they have realized that this is the time to really go for it because it is truly a waste of capital to put it into anything else right now when you have this massive growth potential right in front of your eyes. You can say that this is bit colonization of the world. Experts who are macro investors say that they have never seen a more dominant opportunity in their entire lifetimes. Back in the day, there were times when firms across the world could have 15% to 20% volatility and still had huge bets. So you'd have famous people in the investment world, such as Nicky Roditi, who at one point was the most aggressive risk taker the industry has ever seen. He killed on returns as well, but his volatility was enormous. The size of the risk this old and quiet guy would take was astonishing. And that was how the industry mostly was about years ago, where the micro world had high risk taking and high returns investments at the core of it all.
This Bitcoin thing's interesting. Now, most didn't get it in the beginning. They saw it as a trade. And then everybody saw it, started to see it. Oh my God, there's a parallel universe coming and it's all going to generate alpha because there's no capital. and not enough knowledge in the space, because everybody in it was a technologist and none of these macro guys were in it yet. So the macro guys went, here's an opportunity for us. And one by one, they all started going, have you seen this?
But then came the era of insurance companies and sovereign wealth funds who started saying that people should not be so risky. When questioned on low returns, they said, we really don't care. So they crushed volatility down to 5% before the rise of the millennium, when all of these big platforms started coming up with lots of traders, low volatility, and much lower returns. But the macro guys were irritated, so they again started turning into family offices and said that they wanted to make money the old-fashioned way, which is not by having assets, but by taking risky bets. These guys were the great speculators, and it was these guys that started saying first that the Bitcoin thing seems interesting. Still, they did not really understand Bitcoin in the beginning. They saw it largely as a trade. But soon, as they started to get into it, they realized that there's a parallel universe coming and it's going to generate alpha because there's no capital and not enough knowledge in the space. Because everybody in it was a technologist and none of these macro guys were in it yet. So the macro guys said that here is an opportunity for us, and one by one, they all started going in at around 2012. They started learning about it, and the network of people believing in it kept growing and spreading as they started talking about it to people, sort of polluting them with the idea. Then one day, one of the most famous hedge fund guys in the world at that time, who was a real trader and made all his money in money markets, he one day put a ton of his money in Bitcoin, and that gave confidence to a lot of others in the trading and investment industry because it came from a guy that has been in crypto for a long time, plus has much more class experience, access to enormous amounts of capital, and more guts than anyone else that was around. These investors, when some of their trade worked, would not go 90% into a position and just not do anything because they had their hands tied. They would rather get as much as they can, maybe 10 to 20% exposure, while they get to figure out what to do with the other 80% of the bucket of capital. Of course, it helps that they are multi-billionaires for the most part, so they really aren't looking to become worth 100 billion at this point, but have been doing it as part of the game now with the aim to grow their capital at a reasonable rate without blowing up. And so, they are ready to take the leap, believe in the asset and the potential that Bitcoin shows, and put in huge bets. But that was back then. Now in the present day, it is not speculation, but almost a clear reality that Bitcoin is coming and coming in big. So if you are looking for an opportunity, then this is it. You need to grab it and grab it now because it is truly once in a lifetime.